The Grand Union Hall loomed in the void of space, its mirrored walls reflecting the distant binary stars that framed it. Within its vaulted chambers, the air crackled with tension as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for a momentous occasion. Alien dignitaries of every conceivable form, scaled, feathered, amorphous, crowded into their designated sections, their voices a symphony of clicks, growls, and hisses. At the heart of this maelstrom, humanity stood on the precipice of an unprecedented agreement. Jonathan Charles, Earth's ambassador, surveyed the assembly with a practiced calm. His tailored dark suit, a subtle nod to humanity's flair for presentation, contrasted sharply with the colorful regalia of the alien delegates. His gray eyes scanned the room, sharp and calculating, revealing none of the turmoil that churned beneath his composed exterior. This treaty, heralded as the cornerstone of interstellar peace, was anything but. Seated to Charles's left, Chalthak, the reptilian envoy of the Zarian sovereignty, scrutinized the human ambassador with thinly veiled suspicion. His emerald scales shimmered under the hall's artificial lighting, but his narrow pupils betrayed unease. Chalthak had seen firsthand the consequences of underestimating humans. It was their unpredictability that troubled him most. This baffling species, so fragile yet so relentlessly adaptable. As Charles rose to speak, Chalthak's tail flicked nervously against the polished floor. Charles stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter," he began, his words translated instantly into 100 alien languages. "A chapter of unity, cooperation, and mutual prosperity. The Terran Empire extends its hand in friendship, committed to upholding the principles of the Galactic Union." A murmur rippled through the crowd, some skeptical, others cautiously optimistic. The Union's leadership had been divided on whether humanity, so new to the interstellar stage, could be trusted. The Terrans had proven themselves capable warriors during the War of the Rift, but their tactics, precise, ruthless, and unconventional, had left many wary of their true intentions. Council Leader Kinzer, a towering, crystalline being who refracted the light like a living prism, presided over the proceedings. His voice chimed like wind through glass as he addressed the assembly. "Let it be known that the Terran Empire has signed the Accord of Harmony, binding them to the tenets of the Union. May this treaty endure for generations." As the hall erupted in applause, Charles approached the ceremonial table, where the treaty lay etched onto an obsidian slab. Taking the stylus offered by a drone, he signed his name with deliberate precision. The moment the ink dried, a subtle smile tugged at the corner of his lips. To the untrained eye, it was a gesture of satisfaction, the mark of a diplomat proud of his achievement. But Chalthak noticed. His eyes narrowed, his mind racing. Something was wrong, something he couldn't yet define. Charles met his gaze briefly, his expression unreadable. Chalthak's claws tightened against the armrest of his chair. As the delegates began to disperse, Kinzer approached Charles, his crystalline form glinting in the ambient light. "Ambassador Charles, on behalf of the Galactic Union, I welcome your people into our fold. It is my hope that this treaty will foster an era of unparalleled cooperation." Charles inclined his head. "It is a privilege to stand among such esteemed company," he replied smoothly. "Earth is committed to this alliance and to ensuring the prosperity of all its members." Kinzer nodded, seemingly satisfied, and moved on to speak with other dignitaries. As Charles turned to leave, Chalthak intercepted him, his emerald eyes fixed intently on the human. "Ambassador," he said, his voice a low, guttural rasp. "A word." Charles paused, his expression one of polite curiosity. "Of course, Ambassador Chalthak. How may I assist you?" Chalthak hesitated, weighing his words carefully. "Your species is enigmatic. You adapt quickly, think unconventionally. These are admirable traits, but they also make you unpredictable. I trust your intentions are as noble as you claim." Charles held his gaze, his smile disarming but calculated. "I assure you, Ambassador, humanity seeks only peace and mutual prosperity. Suspicion is natural, but I hope time will demonstrate our commitment to the Union's principles." Chalfak's tail twitched, but he said nothing further. Charles's words were impeccable, his demeanor faultless, yet the reptilian's unease deepened. As Charles departed, Chalfak watched him go, a gnawing sense of foreboding taking root. Behind closed doors, in a chamber far removed from the bustling halls, Charles joined a select group of human officials. Michael Soren, a shadowy figure with graying hair and a predatory air, leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He glanced at Charles, his lips curling into a faint smirk. "Is it done?" Soren asked, his voice low and measured. "It's done," Charles confirmed, placing the stylus on the table. "The treaty is in effect." "Good," Soren replied, his tone devoid of celebration. "Then we proceed as planned. The clauses are buried deep enough." Charles nodded. "They'll never see it coming. The language is airtight, dense, bureaucratic. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late." Soren's smirk widened. "Perfect. Let the Union celebrate their victory. We'll give them peace, just as they wanted. And when the time comes, they'll hand us the galaxy without a single shot fired." Charles exhaled, his expression briefly betraying a hint of weariness before returning to its practiced calm. "It's a long game, Michael. Are you sure we can pull it off?" Soren stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with quiet intensity. "We've outmaneuvered them every step of the way. They think they've tamed us, but all they've done is open the door. Now, we walk through it." Charles nodded, the weight of their shared ambition settling over him. He turned to the window, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. The galaxy was vast, teeming with life, complexity, and power. And now, with the ink drying on the treaty, it was within humanity's grasp. Behind him, Soren's voice cut through the silence, cold and resolute. "This is just a beginning." The Galactic Council's central hub was a sprawling, labyrinthine station, a city in itself, where delegates and administrators from every corner of the Union worked tirelessly to manage the galaxy's affairs. Beneath its veneer of order and cooperation, the subtle tendrils of humanity's influence were beginning to weave their way into the fabric of the institution. Jonathan Charles, ever the picture of calm authority, moved through the crowded corridors with an air of quiet confidence. The treaty had barely taken effect, yet humanity's plan was already in motion. Every word, every gesture, was part of a calculated strategy designed to entrench Earth's diplomats in the Union's most critical institutions. Charles understood that power wasn't seized in bold strokes. It was cultivated one quiet victory at a time. At the Trade and Resource Allocation Bureau, Ethan Cross sat in a conference room filled with representatives from the galaxy's most prosperous civilizations. The topic of debate was a perennial one: the distribution of rare minerals from the Vanar Belt, a resource-rich expanse jealously guarded by its native inhabitants. The meeting was heated, with voices raised in overlapping arguments, each delegate fighting for their world's share. Cross, a man with sandy hair and a disarming smile, had positioned himself as the mediator, listening intently as each speaker vented their frustrations. His demeanor was calm, almost detached, but his mind worked at a relentless pace. When the moment was right, he leaned forward, his tone measured but firm. "Gentle beings," Cross began, his voice cutting through the chaos with practiced ease. "Perhaps we've been looking at this the wrong way. Instead of dividing resources based on historical claims, why not adopt a needs-based approach, factoring in ecological and economic stability? It's equitable, sustainable, and ensures long-term cooperation." The room fell silent as the delegates considered his proposal. A tentative ripple of agreement spread through the group, and Cross suppressed a smile. Another step forward. He wasn't here to solve their problems out of altruism. Every concession earned humanity another foothold in the Union's power structure. Meanwhile, in the Defense Coordination Office, Damian Hartfield was navigating an entirely different battlefield. Tall and imposing, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing, Hartfield was a former military strategist turned diplomat. His role was to influence Union defense policies, steering them ever so subtly in directions that would benefit Earth's long-term interests. The meeting room was filled with holographic displays of star systems and fleet formations. Alien commanders debated the allocation of forces to patrol contested sectors, their arguments steeped in pride and distrust. Hartfield observed quietly, his expression impassive, until an opening presented itself. "If I may," he interjected, his voice calm but commanding. "It seems we're prioritizing quantity over efficiency. A smaller, more flexible fleet, supported by advanced reconnaissance and rapid deployment capabilities, would be far more effective in maintaining security." The alien officers exchanged skeptical glances, but Hartfield pressed on, his tone unwavering. "Earth's experience in asymmetric warfare has shown us the value of adaptability. With the right strategic adjustments, we can cover more ground with fewer resources." By the end of the discussion, Hartfield's suggestions had been incorporated into the Union's defense protocols. The changes seemed minor on the surface, but they marked a shift in doctrine, one that subtly aligned the Union's military strategy with humanity's strengths. While Cross and Hartfield worked within the system, Michael Soren operated in the shadows, orchestrating events that would ensure humanity's rise. From his discreet office within the station's lower levels, Soren directed a network of operatives and informants, each tasked with sowing discord among the Union's member species. In the past month alone, 3 major incidents had strained the Union's fragile unity. A shipment of medical supplies destined for the Zero sector had vanished, leaving the Zerolans to accuse their neighbors of sabotage. A mining dispute on the edge of Union space had escalated into a skirmish, with both sides blaming the other for initiating hostilities. And a seemingly innocuous administrative oversight had caused a delay in relief funds for the drought-stricken worlds of the Sierra Alliance, sparking outrage among its leaders. Each incident appeared random, the result of bureaucratic inefficiency or unfortunate coincidence. But Soren knew better. These fractures were carefully engineered, designed to erode trust between Union members while positioning humanity as the solution to their growing problems. Chalthak, ever watchful, began to sense the pattern. His unease had only deepened since the treaty was signed, and the recent string of crises had set his instincts on edge. He pored over reports and data streams, searching for connections that others had overlooked. The evidence was circumstantial at best, logistical inconsistencies, strange delays, whispered rumors. But the threads were there, if one knew where to look. One evening, as Chalthak reviewed yet another report of a diplomatic dispute spiraling out of control, a realization struck him. The humans were always there, just out of focus, offering solutions and mediating conflicts. Their actions were measured, their interventions calculated. To most, it would seem as though humanity was simply rising to the occasion, proving their worth as Union members. But Chalthak saw the truth. The humans weren't just reacting to the chaos. They were orchestrating it. He took his findings to Council Leader Kinzer, laying out his suspicions with as much clarity as he could muster. Kinzer listened patiently, his crystalline form shimmering under the office's dim lighting. When Chalthak finished, Kinzer tilted his head, the sound of grinding glass accompanying his words. "Ambassador Chalthak, your vigilance is commendable," Kinzer said, his tone diplomatic but dismissive. "However, these accusations are speculative at best. Humanity has brought stability where we needed it most. To undermine their contributions with baseless claims would be counterproductive." Chalthak's frustration boiled beneath his scales. "Council Leader, I urge you to reconsider. Humanity's influence is growing unchecked. If we do not act now, we may find ourselves powerless to stop them." Kinzer waved a crystalline hand, a gesture of finality. "Your concerns are noted, Ambassador, but without concrete evidence, there is little I can do. Humanity has earned our trust, and I will not jeopardize this fragile peace over unfounded fears." Defeated, Chalthak left the council chamber, his tail dragging along the polished floor. He knew he was right, but without support, his warnings would go unheeded. The humans were playing a long game, and it seemed the Union was content to let them win. Back in his office, Charles reviewed the latest reports from Cross, Hartfield, and Soren. The plan was unfolding exactly as intended. Every crisis resolved, every problem solved, brought humanity one step closer to the center of power. The Union was beginning to rely on Earth, their mistrust giving way to dependency. As he leaned back in his chair, Charles allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The galaxy was a complex web of alliances and rivalries, a system so rigid and self-assured that it had never anticipated a player like humanity. They had underestimated Earth once before, and now they were making the same mistake again. Charles's thoughts were interrupted by a message from Soren. The screen displayed a single line. Phase 2 is ready. Charles's lips curved into a faint smile. The seeds had been planted, and now all that remained was to watch them grow. The quiet hum of Chalthak's starship filled the cabin as he navigated through the desolate expanse of space. He had requested leave from his duties, citing exhaustion and the need to recalibrate his mental faculties. In truth, he sought answers he knew could not be found within the polished walls of the Union's bureaucracy. For months, his suspicions had grown, each incident reinforcing his belief that humanity was manipulating events to serve their unseen agenda. The Council's dismissal of his concerns only strengthened his resolve. A flicker on the console drew his attention. The data packet he had intercepted from a classified Union channel was finally decrypted. Chalthak leaned forward, his scaled fingers gliding over the controls as the contents unfolded before him. Reports, communication logs, and encrypted transmissions painted a damning picture. Patterns emerged, disputes where none should exist, resolutions that came suspiciously swiftly, and the ever-present human diplomats at the center of it all. The deeper Chalthak delved, the more a chilling realization took hold. The humans weren't merely solving problems. They were creating them. The shipment delays, the mining disputes, the administrative oversights. It all led back to subtle manipulations orchestrated by Earth's representatives. Their interventions were calculated to earn trust, to make the Union dependent on them. It was a strategy so insidious, so masterfully executed, that Chalthak felt a grudging admiration even as anger boiled beneath his scales. But there was more. One file, heavily encrypted, resisted his attempts to access it. Chalthak's claws tapped a rapid rhythm on the console as he bypassed security protocols. When the file finally opened, a series of names scrolled across the screen. These were not ordinary diplomats or bureaucrats. They were operatives embedded across the Union's most sensitive institutions. Their missions were outlined in chilling detail: destabilize alliances, exploit cultural divides, and gather intelligence on vulnerable member species. Chalthak's blood ran cold. The humans weren't just infiltrating the Union. They were dismantling it from within. His mind raced as he considered the implications. If he acted now, there was still a chance to expose their machinations, to rally the Union against this growing threat. But time was not on his side. A notification interrupted his thoughts. An incoming transmission crackled to life. The face of Council Leader Kinzer materializing on the screen. The crystalline being's form shimmered, his voice resonating with authority. Ambassador Chalthak, your absence has been noted, Kinzer began, his tone laced with thinly veiled irritation. Your dedication is admirable, but your recent activities raise concerns. Explain yourself. Chalthak hesitated, the weight of his discovery pressing down on him. Council Leader, he began carefully, I have uncovered evidence that humanity's involvement in the Union is far from benign. Their diplomats are orchestrating events to destabilize our alliances and consolidate power. Kinzer's form flickered slightly, his expression unreadable. These are grave accusations. Do you have proof? Chalthak transmitted the decrypted files, his clawed fingers trembling as he watched the upload complete. The data speaks for itself. Humanity is not what they seem. The council leader reviewed the files in silence, his crystalline facets dimming as the implications became clear. Finally, he spoke, his tone heavy. This information is troubling, but it is not enough. Humanity's influence has grown, and many within the Union already view them as indispensable. Without irrefutable evidence and a clear plan, confronting them would fracture the council further. Chalfak's frustration flared. Council leader, we cannot afford to wait. Every moment we hesitate, their grip tightens. Kinzer regarded him with a mixture of caution and regret. I will convene a private session of trusted members to review this data. Until then, you must proceed with discretion. If we act rashly, humanity will use it against us. The transmission ended, leaving Chalfak alone with his thoughts. Discretion, Kinzer had said, but time was slipping through his claws. He turned back to the console, scanning the names of the human operatives. One name caught his attention, Michael Soren. The dossier on Soren was sparse, but it hinted at a man who operated in the shadows, a mastermind behind many of humanity's covert actions. If anyone could confirm the full extent of their plans, it would be him. Chalfak's ship altered course, its engines flaring as he set a trajectory toward the station where Soren was rumored to operate. The journey was tense, each passing moment sharpening his resolve. When he arrived, the station's security protocols delayed him, but his rank as an ambassador allowed him access to the restricted sectors. Inside, the station was a hive of activity, its corridors bustling with alien personnel. Chalfak moved with purpose, his senses alert. The room he sought was unmarked, tucked away in a secluded wing. He approached the door, his claws flexing as he keyed in the access code he had uncovered in the decrypted files. The door slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing a dimly lit room filled with holographic displays and consoles. At the center of it all stood Michael Soren, his sharp eyes fixed on a monitor. He turned as Chalfak entered, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before it was replaced by a calm, calculating expression. "Ambassador Chalfak," Soren greeted, his voice smooth. "I didn't expect a visit. What brings you to this part of the station?" Chalfak stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "Spare me the pleasantries, human. I know what you're doing, what all of you are doing. The data doesn't lie." Soren's smile was faint but dangerous. "And what is it you think you know?" "That humanity is not here for peace," Chalfak hissed, his tail lashing behind him. "You're using the Union, exploiting its weaknesses. You speak of unity while sowing division. I won't let it continue." Soren regarded him for a long moment, then leaned back against the console, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. "You're perceptive, I'll give you that. But tell me, Ambassador, what exactly do you plan to do about it? Run to the council? Expose us? Do you think they'll listen to you over the soothing lies we've already woven?" Chalfak's claws clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. "You underestimate the resolve of the Union. We will not allow your kind to manipulate us any longer." Soren chuckled softly, the sound devoid of humor. "And you underestimate us. You think this is about manipulation? It's survival. The galaxy has never made room for the weak, Ambassador. We're simply ensuring our place." Before Chalfak could respond, alarms blared, the room bathed in red light. Soren straightened, his expression shifting to one of cold determination. "It seems our conversation will have to wait. But make no mistake, Ambassador. This is only the beginning." As armed guards stormed the room, Chalfak prepared himself, his mind racing with what he had learned. Soren's words echoed in his thoughts, a chilling reminder of the game humanity was playing. The galaxy's elites had underestimated them once before, and now they stood on the brink of a war waged not with weapons, but with minds. The great hall of the Union Council stood in solemn silence, its towering arches and shimmering panels reflecting the anxious faces of the gathered delegates. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the chamber, their voices subdued. Tensions crackled like static in the air. For weeks, Whispers of betrayal, unrest, and secret pacts had spread through the Union's ranks. Now, they had reached a breaking point. At the center of the room, humanity's delegation sat in unyielding silence. Michael Soren, now the chief envoy for Earth, stood at the forefront. His sharp features betrayed no emotion, but his eyes scanned the room with practiced precision. Behind him, his team of diplomats and operatives maintained an aura of calm, their presence a stark contrast to the unease radiating from the other representatives. Chalthak's arrival drew every gaze. The reptilian ambassador strode forward, his scaled form towering over most of the others. He carried with him a datapad glowing faintly, the evidence he had risked everything to gather. His voice cut through the murmurs, a low and deliberate tone that silenced the hall. "Members of the Union," Chalthak began, his yellow eyes blazing with conviction. "I come before you today not as a representative of my people, but as a voice for the survival of our collective unity. Humanity has betrayed the principles of the Union. They have manipulated us, sown discord among our ranks, and exploited our trust for their gain." Soren stepped forward, his expression unflinching. "Ambassador Chalthak, these are serious accusations. I trust you have evidence to support them." Chalthak raised the datapad. "The evidence is here. Transmissions, correspondences, and directives proving humanity's covert actions. They have orchestrated conflicts, undermined alliances, and positioned themselves as indispensable mediators. Their goal is not peace, but dominance." The hall erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted over one another, some demanding to see the evidence, others defending humanity. Soren waited patiently, his calm demeanor never wavering, until Council Leader Kinzer struck his crystalline staff against the floor, commanding silence. "Order!" Kinzer's voice resonated, his facets gleaming with authority. He turned to Chalthak. "The Council will review your evidence. Ambassador Soren, do you deny these claims?" Soren met Kinzer's gaze, his tone measured and unwavering. "I do not deny that humanity has taken steps to secure its future, but I challenge the interpretation of those actions. Everything we've done has been in service of the Union, not against it. We have solved crises, forged alliances, and strengthened this body when it teetered on the brink of collapse." "Lies!" Chalthak roared, his tail lashing behind him. "You have destabilized us, fractured our unity, and now you stand here and twist your treachery into virtue." Soren's gaze shifted to Chalthak, his voice dropping to a quieter, more dangerous register. "And what would you have us do, Ambassador? Stand idly by while the Union's inefficiencies and infighting doom us all? Humanity has not sought to conquer. We have sought to survive. If that means reshaping the Union to ensure its survival, and ours, then so be it." Kinzer gestured for the datapad. Chalthak handed it over, his claws trembling. As the council leader reviewed the files, the tension in the room grew unbearable. Every delegate watched, their breaths held, as the weight of the moment settled upon them. Finally, Kinzer spoke. "The evidence is compelling. It is clear that humanity has acted with intent to influence and manipulate the Union. However," he paused, his crystalline facets dimming slightly, "it is equally clear that these actions have, in many cases, prevented greater catastrophes. The question before us is not one of guilt, but of intent, and whether the Union can endure this revelation." Chalthak's voice rose again, filled with desperate resolve. "If we allow humanity to continue, they will not stop until they control us all. We must act now, before it is too late." Soren stepped forward, his voice rising with a calm, commanding authority. "The Union is already at a crossroads. You can choose to fracture, to fall back into the petty rivalries and chaos that nearly destroyed you before we arrived. Or you can choose to adapt, to evolve, and to embrace the strength that humanity offers." The room fell into an uneasy silence. Chalthak felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the realization that his words alone might not be enough. He turned to the gathered delegates, his voice filled with urgency. "Do you not see? Humanity's strength lies in their subtlety, their ability to weave their will into the fabric of our systems. If we allow this to continue, we will lose what makes the Union strong. Our unity, our diversity, our autonomy. Soren met his gaze, his expression hardening. And what has that unity brought you, Ambassador? Stagnation? Infighting? Humanity is not your enemy. We are your salvation. But if you choose to reject us, know this. We will survive, with or without the Union. The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy with unspoken threats. The delegates shifted uneasily, their faces betraying their inner turmoil. Kinzer finally spoke, his tone solemn. The Union must decide its future. I call for a vote. To retain humanity as a member of this council, or to expel them and risk the consequences. The vote was swift, but not unanimous. When the results were displayed, the chamber erupted once more. Humanity would remain, but their actions would be closely monitored. Chalfak slumped back, his scales dull with defeat. He had fought with everything he had, but it wasn't enough. Soren turned to him as the delegates began to disperse, his voice low. You were right about one thing, Chalfak. This is far from over. Chalfak stared at him, his mind racing. The war he had sought to prevent was already underway, not with fleets or armies, but with words and alliances, with shadows and whispers.